Welcome back. So, Billie Eilish just dropped her newest album just this past Friday, Hit Me Hard and Soft. So, this album had no kind of leading singles prior to its release. However, Lunch is now kind of the lead single now. I kind of figured as much, especially listening to the album. That is definitely the most kind of appealing and easiest one to push onto radio. I feel like that song is actually going to do very well for her. But overall, this album was kind of a surprise, kind of announcement. And I do remember as well that Billie Eilish herself was quite upset that the track listing got leaked there as well. So she's tried to keep this under wraps for as long as possible. But it's a Billie Eilish album, and she's one of the most highly regarded pop artists, especially in the mainstream, really, of our generation, of the past, of this decade, and honestly the latter end of last decade. She is very highly regarded, and this album is getting highly critically acclaimed alongside that as well. Critic score of an 86 and a user score of an 85. So putting them both together, everyone is really enjoying this record. And then I have a couple of other numbers down over on the corner here, which is Happier Than Ever, which is a critic score of an 83 and a user score of a 78. An album that I'm still not crazy about. I still recognize that it is still a good quality pop record, but when you come from When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? That album, honestly, I can consider that a pop classic now, in my opinion. But that had a critic score of a 79 and a user score of 76, which is kind of low considering of how much of a splash that album did, especially in the year it came out in 2019. But now we are in 2024, and Billie Eilish, with this album, has matured in so many different fronts. When it comes to the songwriting, there's a lot more maturity when it comes to finding love and love lost, and also kind of finding herself in her identity. And kind of, I remember the thing, like, when we all fall asleep, where do we go, and Happier Than Ever. A lot of things about, like, body positivity and self-image. A lot of those things do show up on here, like, for example, on Skinny, which is an amazing intro to start off this album. But the writing in general of this album is a lot more mature, and it is a lot more kind of honed in, focused, topical, and it does allow Billie Eilish as a songwriter to open up and be a little bit more vulnerable, which is a very nice trait that I really like about this record. Another thing I really enjoy about this record is that this is the most textured and most kind of grandiose sound that Billie Eilish has gone for on this album. Also, it's most varied. You still get those moments of kind of that bedroom pop, kind of electronic sounds, especially when you consider the songs like The Diner. The Diner is definitely the song that sounds the most like the prior albums. But you do get some incredibly layered and textured songs like The Greatest and Love of My Life. I'm not gonna do the French because I'm terrible at French. But The Greatest and Love of My Life have some amazing instrumental passage. In particular, The Greatest, the way that it's structured and the way that Billie Eilish is singing through that on the verses, it just builds and builds and builds, and then it comes back down into the second verse, and then it just explodes afterwards with drums, with guitars, just everything that is very new to her sound, but the way that it's incorporated, it just makes it sound just right at home with her. Especially with another major improvement on this record is that her vocals, while the wispy, pillowy vocals of Billie Eilish are still here on this record, she knows now how to really utilize her voice as a more of a powerful voice. Greatest as an example, L'amour de la vie. I tried it. But those songs in particular, Bittersweet is another one, for example, where I find that the vocals are really a lot more prominent, and she's really trying to expand her vocal kind of range, vocal palette, and songs where it works, it just works absolutely just astonishingly well. The Greatest, which is one of my favorite tracks on here, may honestly be one of her best songs, period. Everything encapsulating around it, the instrumental, the way that it swells, the way that it explodes towards the end. Billie Eilish's incredible vocal performance, and the lyrics on this thing are such an amazing storm of just perfection that honestly, this to me is probably one of her best versatile and fully rounded songs she has made in her entire career so far. Saying that that's one of the best, but honestly, Birds of a Feather is actually one of my favorite, it's probably my favorite thing off this record, mostly because it kind of dives into that early 2010s electronic pop that you kind of got a little bit of. I'm thinking of Ellie Goulding as an example, but it kind of has that bedroom pop, kind of a little bit more moodier and muffled kind of sound to it. But the way that the synths just twinkle around, and the way that the drums are a little bit more consistent and catchy, it's just all around. It's like a really fun song, and I think it's going to go really well over in the summer. Now, there's some parts of this album that I do feel like it's not fully baked, or some parts I feel like don't stand out more than others. I'm thinking of examples like The Run of the Diner and Bittersweet. Those two songs, while they have some really cool moments when it comes to production, especially the diner, because again, it does harken back to When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go, and its sound, especially in those kind of saxophone hits, and also those like kind of more kind of Halloweeny kind of synth hits. But I find that Billie Eilish doesn't really stand out vocally to really kind of make it her own song. It kind of sounds just more just like instrumentals with like little bits of vocals kind of peppering the background. It doesn't really stick out as much. And Bittersweet as well just kind of goes a little bit all over the place. And it really doesn't center in to kind of either close off the song or to form some form of a structure. While I really like Love of My Life, it also transitions into this very electronic, almost Dawn FM kind of sound towards the end. And while it sounds absolutely fantastic, it really doesn't lead in anything. It's just kind of this weird, out of place outro that I felt like you could actually build upon, and you could honestly swap out one of these songs and kind of flesh out that outro a lot more, because I really enjoyed where that was going. And that's another sound that this album goes for, is that it does go for almost like a dancey kind of sound to it, a little bit more kind of the moodier side, but it does allow those moments of having dancey and catchy elements mixed in throughout this record. But overall, I really enjoyed this thing. While there is some moments where I feel like we could have some more fleshed out moments, overall, I think this is probably her best album when it comes to her vocal delivery, when it comes to the production choices, and when it comes to the maturity in the songwriting. Again, there's a lot of lyrics that deal in love loss, trying to find love, enjoying the love that you have, as well as kind of dealing with self-image, dealing with self-identity. This whole album really has a mix of everything, and not to mention, it does have moments that do harken back to the sounds that made her trademarked, kind of as a big surprise when she dropped all the way back in 2019 and 2018 with Don't Look at Me and those other EPs and all that kind of stuff there. Overall, this is a very great album. I can definitely see this on a top 20 list. My top list is going to be so monumentally big, but I'm really excited for that because I'm loving just listening to music right now. But overall, I think it's really tough. I want to go an 8.5, but I feel like there's, again, those moments that just don't really get fully fleshed out. So for the current moment, it may grow, but I'm giving it an 8 at the current moment. But overall, this is a very welcome surprise. Honestly, with her keeping this album so low key, I kind of forgot that this was dropping, but now it's a very welcome surprise, and I'm very glad to have this in my library. Again, Skinny, Birds of a Feather, The Greatest, and Love of My Life. I love all of these tracks, but Birds of a Feather, my goodness, I'm going to be playing that consistently. But yeah, that is my review. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for all the support on the videos recently, and I'll try to keep putting out as much content as possible. So again, thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon.